Hi, I'm Alyssa Stevens, and this is A Day in the Life. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at people who have some pretty interesting jobs. We're not saying that you don't have an interesting job, but these are just a little cooler. And in this particular case, we mean it literally. Here's Dan Gindin from the top of Mount Washington.
Darby Field was the first to climb Mount Washington back in 1642. Since then, many have braved the climb, some successfully and some not so successfully. Although that didn't happen very often until 1852, when the first summit house was built. Within the next 8 years, the carriage road, cog railway, and the tip-top house were built. Meteorological observations were being made as early as 1870, but it wasn't until 1932 that the Mount Washington Observatory began keeping daily records at the summit.
The Mount Washington Observatory is a nonprofit scientific and education organization, and our main goal is to be here 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, documenting the weather. There's lots of other things we do, but that's our #1 goal.
Brian Clark is a meteorologist, shift leader, and education specialist for the Mount Washington Observatory. Working at the summit, 6,288 feet above sea level, provides a working environment that changes often.
There is no such thing really as a typical day because every day is a little bit different, whether it be the weather or what we have to do. It also depends on the time of year, but again, generally speaking, we take a weather observation every hour of every day, no matter what. So that means heading outside when it's 30 below zero and blowing 100, and also going outside when it's really nice, 60 degrees and calm, so we see it all.
And they have plenty of time to see it all. The shifts for weather observers last 8 days. Then they are off for 6 days.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, you essentially have two lives in a way. I spend more than half my life living here on the mountain, and then those 6 days in the valley. So very different lifestyles from one place to the other. In the valley, I'm not working day to day, so it's just taking care of life stuff, and then living up here for a week, 8 days at a time. It's hard to put into words exactly what it's like to live where you work and have it be on top of a mountain at the same time.
Since it's a 24-hour, 8-day shift, observers need a place to sleep, eat, and relax from time to time. IT observer Roger Pushore gave us the tour.
This is the living room here, where we have, kind of family time. It turns into a family as we stay here for 8 days at a time, and we enjoy a movie at night. We do have cable TV and a lot of Netflix coming up. We have our kitchen area, where we have a meal every night, plus breakfast, lunch. Here's my lights. Here and here. Large stove. Volunteers come up. Usually 2 volunteers for each shift. They'll come up, they'll cook, they'll clean for us, and it's their chance to come up on the mountain, spend some time. They cook dinner, and usually in the morning, if it's a nice weather, they'll go out and hike. There's probably about 6 months worth of food in here. Several large freezers, more stuff, because in the wintertime, not a whole lot of stuff comes up. What does come up on the snowcat.
They also have sleeping quarters that hold up to 17 people. The day we showed up in September, it was already 30 degrees, with wind gusts up to 61 miles an hour, and the visual conditions were less than spectacular.
We get used to this. This is pretty typical. The fog, 60% of the year, roughly speaking, on average, we're in the clouds or in the fog. So there'll be whole shifts that we go without seeing anything but fog. So yeah, you kind of have to get used to it. Doesn't make it necessarily easy, but you get used to it.
The White Mountains are a beautiful place to be. The summit of Mount Washington can give you breathtaking views. Or, thanks to the extreme weather conditions, it can literally take your breath away.
Dealing with the weather is certainly a difficult part. Sometimes things break, oftentimes things break, and they break at the most inopportune times, of course. And then you just have to patch things together and make them work, use what's here on the mountain. You obviously can't make a trip to the hardware store, so you've got to use what's here and make things work.
The weather room is where forecasting is done and weather observations are recorded. The weather wall is where information comes in from the various instruments outside the observatory. The haze chart tracks wind speeds over a 24-hour period.
Decent winds today, 30, 40 miles an hour, pretty average for this time of year, but then you can compare it to a much windier day like this, July 20th, 1996, 154 miles per hour for a peak gust on this day, so you can see how different it can be. But they're interesting charts because it visually shows you the trends through the course of the day of the wind.
The thermograph keeps track of temperatures over a 24-hour period, just like the Hayes chart. There are also instruments for measuring pressure.
The top number is the air pressure here on the summit right now, and the bottom number is a mathematical correction to what that pressure would be at sea level. On average, these two numbers see about a 20% difference. That means that I'm breathing 20% less oxygen right now than I would be if I were at sea level. If we open up this cabinet, we can take a look at another way to measure pressure, a lot older, but very simple. We find that simple instrumentation tends to be more reliable in the extremes that we see here. So this is called a barograph, and inside the case there's a drum with a piece of paper wrapped around it, and then there's a pen drawing a line that represents the air pressure on that graph. Very simple, and we've been using this for a long time, since the 1960s, and we continue to use it now. The reason it's in this case is because it's measuring the air pressure outside the building, which can be drastically different than the air pressure inside the building.
They also have a barograph that measures the interior pressure, which can change a lot on a windy day because of the doors being opened and closed. The pressure changes because of the air going by so quickly. Even with all this updated equipment at their disposal, the observatory still has some old-fashioned mercury barometers.
This one on the left is the second oldest operating one of its kind left in the United States, in fact. The oldest one resides at the Blue Hill Observatory outside of Boston. The one on the right we still use every 4 days. We use it when we change the barograph charts that I just showed you. So still, they're old instruments, but they're still very useful to us, and they're extremely reliable because there really isn't a simpler way to measure air pressure. It's just a pool of mercury, a column of mercury being driven up the barometer. So very reliable.
Weather observations are done every hour on the hour. Even though they have the weather wall which provides them with information, there are still some things that can't be automated on the summit of Mount Washington. Therefore, they have to go outside, no matter what the elements, and that is where Roger is headed right now.
Because it's foggy today, this is going to be a fairly quick observation. What we're going to do is just look around. It's not raining, it's just fog right now. And then I'll walk over to the thermo shack here, we'll get the temperature and get down and send it to the National Weather Service. So we'll get a temperature here, about 45.6 right now.
Paul heads back inside and records the information on a METAR form, which is a coding standard for weather observations that is used all over the world. He'll then send it off through the computer, as well as to the National Weather Service. They also fill out a couple more forms for their own records, which include the synoptic form, which is done every 3 to 6 hours.
That allows us to take more detailed weather observations, including 6-hour highs and lows, precipitation, that sort of thing. So again, that all happens here at this desk, and in addition to going outside.
The observers also head outside to check the precipitation can.
We're coming out now to grab the precip can, which we'll take back in. Not a whole lot there, but we'll measure that, and that will be how we determine the precipitation for the 6-hour period. And then we'll swap it out with a new can and drop it back in. One of the challenges here is with 100-mile-an-hour winds, the precip doesn't tend to end up in the can, it tends to go right on over it. In fact, the last hurricane we had with over 6 inches of precipitation up here, we measured about a half an inch that actually ended up in the can. The rest of it we had to estimate.
After getting the rainfall measurement, Roger took us to the top of the observation deck and explained what happens up there.
Okay, we're on top of the observation deck at Mount Washington Observatory right now, where the instruments are. If we look up, we'll see our pitot tube anemometer and then an older style of R.M. Young propeller type anemometer, which is what we measure wind speed and wind direction with. And during the winter time, which is starting very shortly, we'll be up here de-icing the equipment. Probably at least once an hour, sometimes as often as every 20 minutes to keep the ice off of it, so it doesn't build up. If you want to be the highest person in New England, and it's a little breezier up here, but there's the R.M. Young cruising right along. And we also have a wind direction gauge here. I am the highest person in New England, actually the highest person north of the Carolinas and east of the Mississippi right now. So a little bit foggy today. We got probably 200 feet of visibility right now. And what we're seeing right now is about a 35-mile-an-hour wind blowing. And it blows well over 100 here during the winter, and we'd be up here de-icing, as is coached with rime ice. Which the rime ice up here is, what it is frozen fog. It's super cooled water, and as soon as it hits anything, including the structures, the people, it freezes immediately and kind of grows on it.
Severe weather research is also done at the summit and, as Roger shows us, in the observation tower.
These windows all come out, and we have a gap in our ladder so that we can take them out and we can actually set up equipment and do wind experiments if we so desire. Set that there. And you actually now have a view of the deck, and the summit is out there in the fog.
The people who work for the Mount Washington Observatory have a passion for the weather, climate, and the environmental surroundings. With passion comes a love to help educate others. The distance learning program gives Brian that opportunity.
We have the scientific part of our mission, which involves the observations and forecasting and education, and within that part of our mission we do have our distance learning program, and that's what all this is for. So with distance learning we can connect through internet-based video conferencing with anybody who has similar equipment anywhere in the world through the internet. Literally, we've connected the folks in Scotland, in California, Arizona, Florida, all over the country, and then we present programs to them. Whether it be about observing Mount Washington's weather, the climate of Mount Washington, life and work on Mount Washington. There's various programs. So literally tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment here that allows us to do that. Lets us interact with them, ask some questions, lets them ask us questions, and we can also show lots of different multimedia, whether it be pictures, video, PowerPoint presentations, anything like that. So it's a really neat interactive program that really any school can participate in, again, just as long as they have similar type of video conferencing equipment. So basically we do these sort of programs whenever a school asks us to and books us for one, but we also do them twice daily on demand for our interactive Weather and Science Museum in North Conway at our administrative facility at the Weather Discovery Center. So sometimes as much as twice a day, but then sometimes we can go days without doing them. And then sometimes we'll do 3 schools in one day, so it just depends on the demand for them.
With all its history, educational offerings, and extreme weather, working at the summit of Mount Washington is a great way to spend your career.
No 2 days really seem to be alike, week to week, year to year, but also the variety of things that I'm doing in general too. I'm a meteorologist by degree, and I'm using that degree, but beyond that I'm doing other things that are interesting, you know, working with technology, electrical work, fixing instrumentation, educational work is a big part of my job because that's part of our mission as a nonprofit organization. So lots of different things all the way down to shoveling snow.
In April of 1934, observers measured a wind gust of 231 miles per hour, which remains the highest wind speed ever observed by man. That's going to do it for this episode of A Day in the Life. We want to thank the Mount Washington Observatory for letting us hang out with them for the day. To find out more about Mount Washington, or if you're interested in volunteering, you can go to their website at mountwashington.org. If you have any ideas for future episodes of our show, contact us by email. And to find out more about WMCT-TV, you can visit us on the web. I'm Melissa Stevens. We'll see you next time.